love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah, man. I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with this hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil. We're inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Charles Bishop and Mike Washington. Mike Washington is still out on assignment, but we're actually on assignment too. Charles and I are here live from the H&P Arena for the Texas Southern with Jackson coming in to play. The game has just literally started. So we're interested and we'll keep you updated, but you see us coming in. Charles, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Doc. Looking forward to this matchup tonight. Like you said, it's just getting underway, but a lot of great action in terms of looking at the SWAC and MEAC this upcoming week.
Yeah, with that being said, let's get right into it in terms of what some of that action is. Let's see if we can get a live look-in shot as things go on and just kind of give you a peek eye view of what's taking place on the field. There's the action is going on. You see no score at this time, but we'll periodically have a look in just to give you an update with two undefeated teams in the SWAC. I would say it's a surprise of two undefeated teams that are playing for first place early in the season. We'll see what that looks like. But let's get into it as we get back to just us talking about it. Welcome to episode 614 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast, a show that's covering the sporting HBCU diaspora, all things HBCU sports, from institutions large and small, from the NEIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, my co-host, Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. As we said, Mike Washington is on assignment. Wilton Jackson, the second, is out. 80 Drew that comes in and back, they're out. So we're going to give you everything you need in regards to what it looks like. So I'm your host for the most. We're here filming from our home studios. In this case, our home studios is the H&PE Arena with the basketball game going on, as you see. Sending a live signal, KCWA's 12:30 a.m. studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, multi-Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper in a beautiful home at Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. So let's get into the news of the day. With that being said, Charles, what's some of the news of the day?
Yeah, well, let's start with this right here, and this is sort of news this afternoon, but from HBCUsports.com. But there is a potential with the Southern Heritage Classic not being played this upcoming season of 2025. Of course, Tennessee State came out with their schedule on yesterday, and the Southern Heritage Classic are waiting for some clarity with regards to whether we're going to even have a Southern Heritage Classic this upcoming season.
So what is your gut telling you? I think you can't just sit on that for a little bit. What is your gut? Do you think there will be a Southern Heritage Classic this year?
My gut would like for there to be a Southern Heritage Classic, but it's very interesting, very noteworthy that Tennessee State, who has been a participant even after Jackson State had pulled out of the game, that it was not listed on Tennessee State's schedule. So I think it's up in the air, Doc.
Yeah, I agree. I have my concerns. I don't think when you start looking at it this late in the game, I think one of the issues maybe early was teams decided on what is the amount that they would sign a contract for. So I think that may have been a little bit of the issue. And then the second part of it, when you get into it, is now, even if he decides to reach that amount and they can get an agreement, pretty much everybody's schedule is full. You see most teams are releasing their schedule. Yeah. And although some have not released it, it's not because they're still looking for a game. They just looking for it. Traditionally, a lot of teams would release their schedule during signing day. So that's part of it, that people have completed a schedule and they know it. They're just not releasing it for a particular date. So you are far far and few between with teams that actually have a date. And then you think about it, they need to have the same open date. And so that is Castination. So I'm not sure that there'll actually be a Southern Heritage Classic, particularly involving Tennessee State. And the opponent is certainly up in the air. So it'll be fascinating to see what that looks like in terms of the news of the day as we kind of discuss that. I told you the other day I wanted to get into a little bit of discussion, and we'll stretch this out for a couple of segments. You start to hear fans cheer with teams trading buckets. Really a competitive game still at this point. But Vick announced his additions to the coaching staff. You know, on Tuesday we talked a little bit about his salary, but now we're talking about his coaching staff. So I want to list this and then get your thoughts on early on. What do you think about what he was able to put together in terms of his staff? Norfolk State head coach Michael Vick announced 8 additions to his coaching staff on Saturday morning. Quote, I hired guys with experience and mental toughness to understand the game of football, end quote. Vick said, quote, the one thing I know is that they are going to put these guys in a position to win. We all have the same mindset. I felt it was only right to hire guys who thought like me and want to lead like me. I'm extremely proud of the guys and I'm excited for them. The prestigious group, as is quoted from this release, of individuals include 4 former NFL players and several award-winning leaders. We've seen that before, the practice of bringing in folks that have the brand name associated with NFL. That's always happened, but many of those folks have had experience, you know, coaching at various levels, and this is a combination of that. You have Terrence Garvin, defensive coordinator, Elton Brown, offensive line coach, Isaiah Cross, defensive line coach, Leroy Reynolds, linebackers coach, Daryl Bullock, assistant head coach, Stephen Adams, special teams coach, recruiting coordinator, DeMarcus McMillan, director of football operations. And so Gavin comes to Norfolk State from Florida Memorial, where he held co-defensive coordinator responsibilities. He spent some time with the Lions. You have Brown that spent the last 7 years with the Prentice School as team's offensive coordinator. Smith worked alongside Gavin at Florida Memorial as the team's co-defensive coordinator. Cross has leaned on his distinguished playing career to mentor aspiring athletes for over a decade. He first did some coaching start at North Atlanta High School. You have Reynolds that learned from one of the most respected figures in football, working with multiple NFL organizations. He's completing the Bill Walsh Diversity Coaching Fellowship with the Seattle Seahawks and Dallas Cowboys. Bullock comes from NSU from across the bay, spending time 2 years as the offensive line coach of Hampton football program. Adams remains on the Norfolk coaching staff, previously serving as the team's defensive coordinator. McMillan comes from Norfolk State with previous experience in managerial roles, providing project oversight and logistic management at multiple organizations. With that being said, what are your thoughts in terms of this coaching staff?
You know, it bears a lot of similarities when I first read about a lot of the staff to the way kind of Coach Prime kind of made up his staff, because there was some pro experience with regard to the coaching. There was also coaches who knew the area. When you talk about recruiting in and around the South, especially when you're talking about the way Jackson State went about recruiting the state of Florida, South Georgia, Mississippi as well. So it's a good representation of basically having some experience around pro experience, and then having some experience that's familiar with the Norfolk area, so that they can get that local talent. So you know, kudos, take your hats off to Michael Vick thus far in terms of the way he's put this staff together.
Good stuff, good stuff. I also want to look at Shawn Gibbs' coaching staff at North Carolina A&T before we take our first break, and we might come back on the other side, and I'll give you a little thoughts and sneak in a little more of this because I want to look at Prairie View staff. But before we take our first break, let's get into A&T. Shawn Gibbs, a favorite son, if you would, even though he's an Eagle, which is fascinating when you hear all this Aggie Eagle talk, but it works in this framework because he spent some times on the championship level staff at A&T. Before we go to the break, we'll make sure we get those updates from across the SWAC, including what's going on here. North Carolina A&T veteran Shawn Gibbs as a head coach. He brought in defensive coordinator Denzel Jones, who was the inaugural Celebration Bowl defensive MVP that has already risen to be the defensive coordinator. Another Aggie Celebration Bowl veteran is Tony McRae, who will serve as the defensive backs coach with Ron Nate's offensive line, Nate Poole, wide receiver, Keith Henry, running backs, Terry Lance, offensive linebackers, Stephen Barnett, tight end, and Alex Purvance, assistant linebackers coach, who will return in Greensboro as well. With that being said, Charles, as we hear the ocean of soul that really caught everybody by surprise for the Christmas day that broke the internet for a lot of folks. They're doing their thing. But with that being said, what are your thoughts on A&T staff under Shawn Gibbs?
I think, as you mentioned, as you read off the experience of a lot of that staff over there on A&T, I think A&T fans can rest assured they'll be happy that Shawn Gibbs put together another great staff, much like he had at Fort Valley. So I'm excited for where A&T's, their direction that they're going, and we're going to see what A&T this upcoming season. I tell you, the ocean is extremely loud now.
Good stuff. Let's take our first break. Before we do that, you want to give some updates as the band starts to quiet down as they're coming back on the court after the timeout. It's 4 minutes.
Got some quick updates from here. Here in the HBCU arena, Texas Southern has jumped out on Jackson State 13-8, 4:17 left to go here. First quarter of play. Another one that has started. So those are some quick scores coming in early. FAMU on top of Mississippi Valley, 44-23. That game is in the second quarter, Doc. So those are your early scores.
Good straight update. Let's take our first break. We'll come back on the other side and talk a little bit more about some of these coaches. We'll go to down on the hill, as they say in this part, talk about the Prairie View coaching hires that we've hired so far and get your thoughts on those, Coach. I'll give you a little cheat code. I saw a lot of championship appearances, a championship won by a lot of coaches, and I thought that was intriguing. We'll be right back after this first break.
Looking for the ultimate cultural experience of 2025? The Zora Outdoor Festival of the Arts is where you need to be. From January 31st to February 2nd, Eatonville, Florida will come alive with incredible live performances from the Levert Experience and the Bar Cave. Immerse yourself in interactive art. Shop from over 80 vendors. Take a journey through history with a new virtual tour app. And enjoy family-friendly STEM activities. Plus, don't miss the unforgettable R&B tribute to the legends, honoring talents such as Whitney Houston, Marvin Gaye, and Luther Vandross. This is more than a festival. It's a celebration of Eatonville's rich cultural heritage. Visit zorafestival.org for tickets.
Hey y'all, it's your girl Sonia from She Say Sports. Make sure to check us out every Friday morning at 9 a.m. on Black College Sports Network, YouTube, and Linktree. And please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube page.
Morehouse College and Tuskegee University men's basketball teams were selected to compete in the 2025 NBA HBCU Classic presented by AT&T. The fourth annual NBA HBCU Classic will be played in the Bay Area as part of NBA All-Star 2025 and will once again celebrate the rich traditions, on-court athleticism, and commitment to excellence of the HBCU community. For tickets, visit nba.com/all-star.
Press the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill with Inside the HBC Sports Lab. Let's get back into it. Charles, what's the latest score before we get back into some of the coaching talk about Prairie View? As we got it here, TSU is still up with 1:49 left in this first quarter. They're up 18-10 as they jumped out early and continue to play some good basketball, but it's a long game. We will keep you updated as that looks. With that being said, I want to give you a little insight of the coaches that have been announced on Tremaine Jackson's staff at Prairie View. You have the defensive coordinator, which is Brandon Anderson. He has a NIA national champion as a linebacker. Sioux Falls, as he got it done. Coaching Anderson brings a championship pedigree to the Hills. So I'm fascinating in terms of what that looks like for pedigree. In terms of Trent Early is an interesting story for me, as he's the assistant head coach, co-defensive coordinator, linebacker coach. He actually played at Texas Southern for a while, was a student of mine in sport management as things are going on, what that looks like. As we continue to do what the work is there, it looks like Charles may be having a little bit of computer program, so we're going to try to get him into the light, and we just do it from this angle as we get it going for the rest of the show. With that being said, first guy I talked about was head defensive coordinator, I should say, Brandon Anderson. He has a championship, two-time NIA champion as a linebacker at Sioux Falls. Coach Anderson brings championship pedigree. He has 2 CS Go South titles, obviously over there when he was with Valdosta. Colorado Mesa, Linewood, developing standout linebackers. I was really interested in this one. Trent Early. Trent Early was a former student of mine. He played a couple years here, transferred out. He ended up getting his sport management degree, which he started here at another institution. But he is the assistant head coach, defensive coordinator, and linebackers coach. He's traveled pretty extensively. He has a wide background. Obviously, he was part of that BSU staff over there. Before that, he spent some time Southern Arkansas, where he graduated from, but a lot of experience with linebackers, championship. He has a 24 NCAA title run for what they did last year. You also have on this staff Capano Roy Suega, who is defensive line coach. He is 2024. He led Texas A&M Kingsville defensive line to elite performance, number 1 in the Lone Star Conference, and number 3 nationally in red zone defense. 84 tackles for losses, 19 national, 2.8 yards per rush, 17 national, 99 rushing yards per game, 25 nationally, multiple all-conference players, obviously on his defense. As he got it done, they were Vandals. He got them to back-to-back FCS playoff appearances when he was over there. So a lot, you can see stacking the deck, it seems, with a lot of folks with career. Let me go with this one, defensive backs, Darren Kerrigan, DG. Has been around for a while, gets it done. East Central, Texas A&M, Commerce, UI, Texas Southern, Valdosta. I remember when he was here at Texas Southern, did some credible work. NFL liaison with that experience, with 16 years of coaching experience. Even though he looks quite young, you think he just could still play. He came out yesterday. Special teams coordinator, tight ends. We always talk about special teams. Jackson Hadley. He has experience. Earned second-team Alls conference in his honors, recruiting coordinator previously in certain stints, but he has some championship pedigree as well. And then you have the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach, but everybody always interested. Chris Buckner, in terms of his background, brings over 14 years of coaching experience, FCS national championship with Sam Houston. That piqued a lot of people's interest in terms of being able to put that out there So, and then obviously you have Bryce Carson, offensive line coach, run game coordinator, in terms of what he brings to the table. He has done it at Valdosta State, West Georgia, Division II program. Pretty good football. But he has a 2022 NCAA statistical champion title for total offense and setting single season rushing records when he helped West Georgia get it done a lot of ways.
So, two-part question that I want to ask Doc is, what staff member do you think excites the fan base, and which one of the hires you believe is the most pivotal in terms of when you really start taking a look at improvement for Prairie View from 2013?
I think defense has been an issue even when Prairie View was going to the divisional champions 2 out of the last 4 years. They were relatively solid on defense, but there were some places where they were vulnerable. You've seen that when they played the upper teams and the SWAC. So I think that's one thing that just people in general see what it looks like. What I thought about the staff was just the number of champions, whether it's conference, regional, national, championship runs, Division II or FCS level. I think that's fascinating, getting coaches that have been part of it.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the winning mentality.
Yeah.
They can tell folks and moms and players on their staff, if you do it this way, I know it's about success. I've seen it. So I think that's important. I think generally speaking, fans are just kind of excited about understanding that. But I think it's holistic. I don't think it's just one person. Obviously, offense sells tickets.
Yeah.
So the offensive coordinator is going to be fascinating, which is Chris Buckley. What he was able to do when you go back to that championship run for Sam Houston State. They were able to run the ball effective, but they had a quarterback that could spin it. So they were multiple, if you would. And I think to be effective, unless you just really had that type of defense. We saw that with Jackson State. When you have that good of a defense, you know, and you can run effectively, you can mix in the pass and get away with not necessarily being as strong. But I think going forward, as people try to improve, I'm not sure how often you can get away with it.
So I'm always fascinated with this part, like from a fan base perspective. Is there a position, obviously, I take a look at a position like quarterback. Like when you see that recruit comes in, when that recruit comes in, how pivotal that is, and we always talk about it. You know, 70% of it, 80% of it is having a quarterback that can, keep ahead when all about them are losing there. So it's always curious to see, how these new staff members go about their recruiting process and who they start bringing in that can really kind of turn some heads.
Oh, good stuff. I agree. That is a lot of it as we get into it. And then we'll get a little more spring ball.
Yeah.
And then, as you know about this game, you can have the greatest coaches that are very competent in what they're doing. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean necessarily the previous.
Very true.
Right. But if they can't find a way to get the players, whether it's due to them not being able to be as effective, you just, in a tough recruiting period of time where folks are choosing other stuff or teaching more financial deals. You might have some guys that are close, but you can't land them. And then you have the issue that most people kind of ignore. Certain schools have, different regards in terms of who they're going to admit into the institution. And not to say that one institution is actually academically that much more elite, but we do know there are different standards based on state laws and rules, high school, those kind of things. The players are able to get through the process. So can you, at the end of the day, can you recruit enough talented players where what you do coaching-wise can be effective? Which is something that I'm not sure that we all put together. We just kind of say, hey, coach. But there's some things I tell you all the time, whether it's basketball, football, baseball, whatever. And we've been watching as just fans, and we say all the time, that's just a baseball play. That's just a football play. That's a basketball play. There's certain things you need to do. And at some point, I can be a coach and tell you as many times in practice. Hell, I can tell you on the sideline when you get in there. Yeah. Don't do that. But if that's not your mindset,
right?
If you're not just a guy that thinks the game, or you clutch up in moments, there's nothing a coach can do. A coach can only put you in the right place. He can't make the tackle for you.
Right.
So he can tell you, hey, this play is coming out of here. I need you to have containment. But if you just have a guy that is aggressive, he sits in there, you do that,
Happens all the time.
And then it might be a time where the coach says, "Hey, you need to come join me."
Yeah.
But he's out there starting for a reason. That don't necessarily mean his backup is that's talented. He may be a little more disciplined with help, but then that lacks a lot of times in the talent in terms of what he can do. Mm-hmm. So that limits the coaching in terms of what they can do. Mm-hmm. And that's the game within the game where if you're not careful, you just get into this fan mode where you're just seeing things and you're like, why the coach ain't doing it? I don't know about that. Mm-hmm. So those are things that I always think about in that process of what it looks like. So I'm kind of fascinating in terms of what goes on in terms of that. And then the other thing that's fascinating, since we're on this level, we'll get back into basketball in the third segment and fourth quarter, we'll take a deeper dive. SIEC and CIAA in terms of some members updates and take a look at a couple of national teams at the NI level. We'll do the girls in the third segment, and then the boys NI in the last second of the men. But the other part is I've been saying this since the conference expanded. Sometimes it's a conference. It's a scheduling issue. What schedule favors somebody? Yeah. And sometimes you can look at it early and you think it's a favorable schedule. Yeah. Or what if a team is a little better, or if you play a team with somebody that's hurt. So sometimes it's also just, is it your time to win? Right. You can say that after the point with Jackson State. A lot of things, to their credit, they played well. They got better. Teams they needed to play a certain time. They got a crucial win over FAMU. If we look back at it,
having FAMU at home. Yeah.
At home. Yeah. And that was anybody game late. But having them at home to be able to make some of those key plays late were crucial for them to go on the final run. Yeah. And it played out where they could have lost their game theoretically, and FAMU still did what they did. Then maybe they still playing for the championship because they had overall defense record. Right. But who's to say that maybe now FAMU has a little more confidence? They played them. Right. But they lose those two. Yeah. They might just lose one.
How much did the season turn on that loss? Jackson.
When we say, well, a game or two gets you a loss. There it is. We'll never know. And as history will say it, at the end of the day, all people do is read the record. Right. And forever in a day, all that nuance don't matter. In fact, they're champion. But as we go into it, those things become important. So what are your thoughts when you start plugging in all those things with schedule, coaching? Where is your early indicator of what we should be looking for going into spring ball?
Well, I think right now, what turns heads is, transfer portal and the guys that are starting to filter in. I think that those are the early things that kind of turns heads. But, if you're a Prairie fan, if you're an Alabama A&M fan, I think that there's a palpable excitement in terms of the expectations that have been laid out. Same thing when you're talking about Norfolk State. Same thing when you're talking about Delaware State. There's an expectation or an excitement that accompanies these new hires. And, it's almost like a lot of fans, you see that now. They can't wait to fast forward into the fall to see what happens. So media days are going to be fun for us this upcoming season.
Yeah, that'll be fascinating when you look at that. Based on that, as we get into our next break, let's go ahead and give some updates, some scores, what's going on. TSU has stretched out their lead a little bit. Yeah. 29-20, 6-11 to play. I know you hadn't had just your eyes on the game. You get the peek here and there. Yeah. But anything stand out to you at this point in terms of what TSU is getting done?
The fact that they we talked about this on a Thursday night. We're starting to see fans filter in, and you probably can't see it on camera too well, but fans are filtering in really well here for this TSU home game, coming in 3-0.
Especially on the home side, with the backside. Yeah, the proverbial visitor side, if there's such a thing in arenas today, because it's really all one.
But no nerves. They're playing excellent ball, up 29-20 thus far. So it was nip and tuck thus far, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, TSU went on about an 8-0 run that really got them this early lead.
Good stuff. Any other scores that you want to talk about?
Yeah, let's take a look around the swag. Prairie View on top of Alcorn 20-8 thus far. This score, third quarter, Jazz getting back on the way. FAMU on top of Mississippi Valley 45-23. And then UAPB and Bethune-Cookman. Let's see, can we get a score on it real quick? As UAPB is up on Bethune-Cookman 28-25. That score is in the second quarter.
Man, good games. Well, let's take our second break as TSU is really stretched things out. They're up by 14 now, 34-20. Jackson State is forced to call a timeout with 5 minutes left in the second quarter. Man, Texas Southern just went on the sprint. We just said 29, right?
Yeah.
5 points. We'll be right back after this next break.
This is Brian Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Wrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Wrap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
Looking for the ultimate cultural experience of 2025? The Zora Outdoor Festival of the Arts is where you need to be. From January 31st to February 2nd, Eatonville, Florida will come alive with incredible live performances from the Levert Experience and the Bar Cave. Immerse yourself in interactive art. Shop from over 80 vendors. Take a journey through history with a new virtual tour app. And enjoy family-friendly STEM activities. Plus, don't miss the unforgettable R&B tribute to the legends, honoring talents such as Whitney Houston, Marvin Gaye, and Luther Vandross. This is more than a festival. It's a celebration of Eatonville's rich cultural heritage. Visit zorafestival.org for tickets.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KEAVERSVOICE.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
Hey y'all, it's your girl Sonia from She Say Sports. Make sure to check us out every Friday morning at 9 a.m. on Black College Sports Network, YouTube, and Linktree. And please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube page.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab as you're getting a little bit of a nice look in at the game there. As you see, they're in action. You still have Jackson State up by 14. Texas Southern Tigers up by 14, 36-22, with 3:43 left in the second quarter before we enter into the half. With that being said, I want to talk a little bit about the CIAA. Let's get in some of the key matchups over here in terms of CIAA. We'll start in the Southern Division because it's just struggling.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say it. I mean, you got teams that are just hovering at 500 basically, a little bit over it with their overall record, and they're doing the same thing in conference play. So nobody's pulling apart. And the problem with it, they just have not really started divisional games. You have your intra-divisional games where you can see the Northern Division is dominating the Southern Division. We'll talk about a little bit about the Northern Division shortly. But you got Fayetteville State. They're overall at 8-6. They've won the last game, 4-2 in the conference race, but right behind them, they're Claflin over there out of South Carolina. They sit at 7-6 overall, but 3-3. They're just 500. I'm gonna go with the next two because they're in the same loss column, equal at 3 as Claflin, which is Shawn and Livingston. Both of them sit at 2-3 in the conference play, but they have a losing record, 5-9, 4-10 overall. They haven't been playing ball late because they've lost the last two of those teams. So they are right there in terms of overall conference when you look at the division. Mm-hmm. So that division play for the Southern Division is going to be interesting. Because you might get some teams to separate, but then you might not.
Well, they get parity early and then the Southern Division. That's not good parity, but parity thus far.
And it's a little bit surprising in terms of what you've seen from Fayetteville Broncos over the years. So to be interesting, with injuries coming into play, or is this more of a rebuilding time for the Broncos? So we'll get to see as this little bit comes on play. They all want to know in terms of division races. They defeated Johnson C. Smith the other day, but that's what's going on over there in terms of key matchup. You do have a matchup coming up that will be interesting with Fayetteville State and Livingston in terms of what takes place. Some of these games played today give you an update. You have Johnson C. Smith over Virginia Lynchburg, winning 67-53. Virginia State over Winston-Salem State is the ladies over there in Winston-Salem State. The Rams over there are struggling a bit. Virginia State got it done and beat them by 30, 78-48. So that's where we get a chance to talk a little bit. But any last thing you want to say about the Southern Division outside of being nice and saying parity?
parity. But it's right now it's early. A lot of basketball to be played, but they're fighting it out pretty tough over there. It's like you said, it's parity.
I think you're being nice. With that being said, Virginia Union playing some good basketball. Only 3 losses on the season. They sit at 10-3. They're 4-0 in terms of the conference race. Right behind them is Virginia State. That rivalry, boy, we've seen it go down in football with the end of the season where Virginia State got it done, made sure they got into the championship game, claimed the regular season championship, but then set up the rematch where Virginia Union wins. They go to the playoffs and go on a historical run for them in terms of winning a playoff game that hadn't been done in school history. They win 2 of them and go down in historic fashion as they go to the quarterfinals, essentially the regional finals, like the previous couple of other teams. Bowie State, to name those teams, Winston-Salem State, obviously, they went all literally to a championship game. But we've seen that with a couple of these teams that are not. Now it's on the basketball side. More stuff going on. But I have to sneak in Bowie State. 11-7 and 5-1. We'll talk about Bowie State a little bit on the men's side, maybe more. Even though they're struggling there, they got a big win. Yeah. A couple of big wins on the season.
Didn't see that coming.
It's interesting how they played quite well against Division I talent, HBCUs, but struggling conference. They in women's basketball sit at 11-7 and 5-1. And then you think about these things: Elizabeth City State, Lincoln, PA. They at 4-2. Yeah. So they're just 2 games back.
Right.
I know it's early, but I don't think you can race them. Bluefield State struggling modestly, but let's focus on your thoughts on the Northern Division.
Well, I mean, taking a look at it early, I mean, Virginia Union, Virginia State fighting it out. And you mentioned Bowie State. They have a young lady, Destiny Riles. She's averaging 16 points a game. So their teams are fighting right in there. But as you mentioned, Union and State, they're on a 5 and 4 game win streak respectively. So it's very interesting to take a look at that. And when does that matchup come up with regards to this?
That's a Saturday matchup. Virginia State, Virginia Union. I'm glad you asked about it. It's in forget Virginia, as I say. In terms of Virginia State, will be hosting that game against Virginia Union. So that makes it a little more interesting as they'll be battling essentially for first place. So what are your thoughts in terms of that matchup on the women's side before we go to the men?
Well, it should be a fun. I mean, you take a look at Tania Green for Virginia State. For Virginia Union going into that game. So I'm looking forward to sometimes you're trying to figure out who are the players where it makes it a good matchup. So you start paying attention to the statistics in terms of who's in the top 5 and scoring in CIAA. And she's just outside the top 5, sitting at 6, averaging about 15 points per game. So it's good to see when the stars start coming out early here in this basketball season.
Other thing I want to be fascinated with a little bit is on the men's side. As I pull that up a little bit and get an update and see what that looks like as we talked about women's basketball. Fascinating in a lot of ways about the CIAA in terms of men. And one of the things we can talk about before we get into the action is Bowie State Bulldogs on the men's side had a big win over Howard. We talked about that game on Tuesday, but I don't think we gave them much of a chance. I must admit, but they got it done in terms of the men's basketball. What are your thoughts in terms of what took place there?
Yeah, didn't see that coming. I mean, Bowie State, like you said, they had been kind of fighting it out in conference, but that's a win over Hampton now and a win over Howard. And Howard's been playing some really good basketball. Who knows what happened that night, but kudos to Bowie State, 76-73 win.
And they won a close one. It was close, at least going down the stretch. They were tied, got a big call. They worked their way, hit the free throws, and then you were in one of those situations where missed shot and you got a foul. So they end up winning 76-63. But that's what you do when you're looking for upset. You find a way to kind of stay around.
Yeah.
And if you can make a big play or get a big call, the other team may tighten up just a little bit. And that's what you call the victory. But let's go with the Northern Division first, since we did Southern Division on the women's side. Northern Division, we have Virginia State men, again, looking good. They're 10-4 overall, 5-0 in terms of the conference race. Right behind them is Lincoln, Pennsylvania, that sits at 11-5, 5-0 in that race. And then it drops off a little bit with Bluefield State that is just sitting at 3-2. But credit to Bluefield, they are 10-5 overall. And so Virginia State, Lincoln, Pennsylvania, what are your thoughts in terms of them starting off hot at 10-4 as they are finding a way to get things done early in this match?
I mean, a 7-game win streak, that speaks volumes for both Virginia State and Lincoln, Pennsylvania. So you start talking about matchups when they start seeing each other. I'm looking forward to when we get into some of these matchups with each other with Virginia State and Lincoln, Pennsylvania. So it should be fun.
Yeah, a lot of those matchups going on today. So we'll get some updates in terms of what that looks like. You have Claflin at Livingstone, Winston-Salem State at Virginia State. You have Fayetteville State at Shaw. Games to be played today. And then you have Saturday's matchup with Johnson C. Smith out of conference matchup with Lee McRae's College, Claflin and Winston-Salem State. You do have that Virginia Union Virginia State matchup. Virginia Union is struggling a little bit, 7-8 on the season, 1-2 in conference play, but it's a rivalry game, so you imagine it's still going to be big. About some games to keep your eyes on. Then you have Elizabeth City State, Bluefield State. In terms of that matchup, you have Shaw, Livingston, Bowie State at Lincoln. Interesting, can any of the momentum with that big win over Howard help Bowie State kind of recover, as they just sit at 9-8 overall, meaning they were 500 going into that matchup. But they're just 1-4 in terms of CIAA. So again, big matchups there in terms of what take place. Before we take our third and final break, we're at halftime here. What is the score in terms of halftime play? As we take this first.
Yeah, Texas Southern on top of Jackson State, 41-25, and a battle of 2-3-0 teams coming into this game. Texas Southern scored 41 points thus far. That's been kind of the story of the season. They've been able to score the basketball and rebound, and they're doing it thus far in this first half.
That's pretty good formula.
Yeah, it was a great one.
You got some other scores?
Yeah, let's take a look around the SWAC. UAPB, this game is at halftime on top of Bethune-Cookman, 37-32. We take a look over down at Prairie View on top of Alcorn. Alcorn has gotten back into this game 27-23. They were down 10-0 to start that game. Let's see, in Tallahassee, Morales on top of Mississippi Valley 59-40. That's with 2:50 to go in the third quarter.
Let's get in here. NIA on the women's teams are doing pretty good. I just want to give you a record here. Don't want to give them some love. They women's basketball, Langston women, 14-1 overall, 10-1. They're rolling in conference play as their next game is tonight. They have Wayland that's playing some pretty good basketball, so we'll be interested to see what that matchup brings to the table in terms of them going on in terms of that. They played Wayland on the 14th in terms of those matchups, so interesting. It's saying that they lost. That was back in November in terms of what that looks like. So we'll look at those matchups and continue to do it. The other one is always interesting when you look at Florida Memorial, as they were trying to see if they could do some good basketball. So give you an update in terms of what they're doing. Women-wise, fascinating on that side of things in terms of their basketball record. In those matchups, Florida Memorial, can they continue to get it done with their records overall? As I looked that up, give you an update. 13-2, and won in conference play. I told you it's another team to keep your eyes on. So just always want to give a little love in terms of NIA programs, of what they're doing on the women's side. We'll talk about the men's side because Langston, the team that everybody quietly has their eyes on and what that looks like. So fascinating in terms of those programs as they go on to that. Last thing I did want to talk about in terms of just the early season so far for basketball. What are your general thoughts in terms of basketball play?
This obviously has been the exciting deal when you take a look at Jackson State's women's program. Expectations. I don't think a lot of fans thought that they'd start the season off 3-0. Same thing with regards to Texas Southern women's basketball. I mean, I think just both of these teams coming into conference play 3-0 has been a bit of a surprise. Flip side of that, on the men's side of the ball, same thing. Jackson State has been a bit of a surprise early in this season. We talked about getting some of those wins home, protecting home court. I think that's been huge. Texas Southern doing that thus far in this early in this game.
A bit of news about NIA program reclassifying. I'm gonna be interested to see how that goes, but I'm gonna hold it tight and wait to the appropriate time to put that. I'm fascinated what that looks like in terms of those matchups. With that being said, let's take our last break. We'll come back on the other side, talk a little bit about the SIAC, women's first and men's, give some updates before we close, look at a couple of strong NIA men's programs. With that, we'll be right back after this class. This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavil of Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app. As we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down. It's like a loop machine.
You're looking for the latest information on Southern University sports, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and HBCU athletics. There's only one place to go. Tune in to the Carlos Brown Show, exclusively on the Black College Sports Network.
Looking for the ultimate cultural experience of 2025? The Zora Outdoor Festival of the Arts is where you need to be. From January 31st to February 2nd, Eatonville, Florida will come alive with incredible live performances from the Levert Experience and the Bar Cave. Immerse yourself in interactive art. Shop from over 80 vendors. Take a journey through history with a new virtual tour app. And enjoy family-friendly STEM activities. Plus, don't miss the unforgettable R&B tribute to the legends, honoring talents such as Whitney Houston, Marvin Gaye, and Luther Vandross. This is more than a festival. It's a celebration of Eatonville's rich cultural heritage. Visit zorafestival.org for tickets.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab, letting you hear a little bit about the Ocean of Soul as they continue to do their thing. We're back at it. Let's get into a little bit of the SIAC and see what is changing around the world on the SIAC side. With that being said, when you look at it, looking at the East Division, where it goes down, Clark Atlanta starting to say the Clark Atlanta name. A lot of sports.
Yeah, we are.
I tried to
What's that about?
I tried to tell y'all that was sleeping giant. I remember everybody told me, they don't play no, they don't win over. All of a sudden, they learned a little bit of winning, didn't they?
Yeah.
And a solid AD and a president that really cares.
That starts.
Right?
Yeah.
It starts there. And I knew that because Dr. French was at Miles and they won. He moved over there. You didn't think he was going to try to do the same thing with him? Now, the thing is, he had a couple of tough hires. I think they were good on paper. They didn't work out. You didn't even see anything. But back to the women's basketball. Clark Atlanta's 8-2 overall. They sit at 12-4 overall. In their last 10, they're 8-2. Playing some really good basketball. 6-2 in conference, just above Allen that sits at 4-3. And we'll talk a little bit about Edward Waters over there in Florida. They sit at 8-5 overall. But those other teams are kind of playing up and down basketball. Yeah. Allen is 5-5 in their last 10. Edward Waters 6-4 in their last 10. Sitting at 8-5 overall and 5-4. What are your thoughts in the East Division of the SIC for women with Clark early on leading the way?
I think you touched on it. I mean, teams are just up and down this far in conference play. Who is the team that can relatively stay consistent? They might get a chance. If you talk about get a 2, 3, 4 game win streak, you can run away with the conference if everybody's going to give that.
Yeah, I would say Clark Atlanta says that we've been a little bit of we said 8-2 in our last season. Everybody else is at 500. You know, that's not us. Yeah. We're doing our part. Yeah. And the question is, to your point though, can they stretch it out? They lost those 2 games there, which kind of puts them in the park. But you look at what they're doing overall, it's fascinating. Let's shift to the West Division, where you have Miles. Miles sits at 8-2 in their last 10 games, but they're 10-3 overall, really good record. 7-2 in conference play, but right behind them is Lane. They can't get comfortable along with Central State. They both sit at 6-3 in terms of conference play. Lane has had a solid season thus far as they're 10-5 overall, but Central State is 7-7. And so they've been at 500 level at 5-5, same as Lane. Kind of hit a rocky spot as they won a little bit early, but they're just 6-4 in their last 10. So you see 2 teams kind of separate themselves at least in this last 10 game stretch. Yeah. But let's focus on that West with Miles, Lane, Central State. What are your thoughts in terms of what they're doing thus far?
I mean, like you said, Miles being the more consistent team, 8-2 of the last 10 games, and I think it's very interesting early on in the season. But the 2 teams are kind of separating themselves a little bit. Like I said, they can't get too comfortable because Lane is right there behind Miles, and then you take a look at where Allen is, just a game off behind Clark.
Let's get into it, start switching over to the men, but I want to look at one thing before we go to the men when we talk about Clark Atlanta. Some of the key matchups going down the stretch. They're on the road this Saturday and Sunday. They're at Savannah State and at Edward Waters, so that's going to be fascinating. It's going to be a tough, tricky road trip. Anytime you go on the road, fascinating. You showed you Edward Waters was right there in the mix in terms of division. So that's to be a key matchup to watch on Monday, Dr. Martin Luther King's holiday. So fascinating what that looks like going down the stretch. They do not face Lane down the stretch, so it'll be interesting to see what that means when it plays out. So I wanted to give you a little bit about that. Let's switch over here to the men. We're going to stay in the East because Clark Atlanta. I like a lot of things about Clark Atlanta. I keep telling folks, and y'all gonna one day listen to me. They are 8-2 in their last 10, sitting at 10-5, 7-1. But credit to Edward Waters. They're also 8-10 in their last. 8-2 in their last 10, along with Morehouse, 7-3. So that AUC doing some things in terms of at least their last 10 games. Morehouse just sits at 8-7, and remember they had that matchup with Howard. Yeah. So that's going to be fascinating to see how Howard, how they rebound. Shout out to AD Drew in terms of the be over there at Morehouse. They're 6-2 in the conference, so they're right there in that mix. As Clark Atlanta 71, Everwater 72. Talk about the East Division, where it's still a fight between Clark Atlanta and Everwater, just like on the winning side.
Yeah, I mean both teams playing consistent, like you mentioned over the last 10 games. Both teams are 8-2. One can't get a little bit more comfortable, and Morehouse sitting right there.
Well, Miles is starting to pull away from the West. They're 8-2, which is something that we have said in our refrain. A lot of folks in that last 10 at the top have been able to figure it out. But everybody's playing 500 ball just above it or worse behind them. They sit at 12-3 overall and 9-1. Next closest team is Kentucky State at 6-5. Everybody else is at 500.
Yeah, they stretch it out.
Yeah, so Miles is being able to stretch it out. While the East is still competitive, at least at the top of the race, it's fascinating to see in terms of Miles. What are your thoughts in terms of Miles and what they're doing in that West? A couple more games and wins, they can kind of start to put it to rest and start setting up how they want to get ready for the turn.
Yeah, obviously Miles separate themselves from the rest of the guys, and they've been the consistent program. We talk about SIAC over the past few years. Love the way they get after you on defense, on the defensive side of the ball, and then just the fact that talk about taking a look at these teams early in the season. Who can be a little bit more consistent? Who can string together some wins? They can really take out what you can.
Yeah, when you talk about that, Miles had a big win as they went on the road a couple of days ago as they defeat Kentucky State 64-51. They get it done against your state 82-81. A close game there, but they get the victory. Credit to them. They don't play Kentucky State again if Kentucky State can stay in the race. That's the last game of the season. Kentucky State 226 in terms of that matchup. It's in Fairfield, Alabama, so you're asking a lot. But that gives you an idea of where that game is. You have the matchup where they go outside of Division II and play an in-state rival of the NIA with Oakwood, and that's back in February, the 4th to be exact. So those are some games that I'm kind of interested in terms of what that looks like. So, again, any overall thoughts in terms of the men's side of the SIAC?
Yeah, Clark's getting done, Miles.
With that being said, let me give you an update in terms of Langston. Langston sits at 13-2, 9-2 in terms of what that looks like. So they continue to play some good basketball. They've won 8 straight games, so they righted that ship when we talked about some early conference losses. They just have now started to win, so it'll be fascinating to see can they continue to get it done in terms of Langston get ready. What many think should be a long NIA tournament run, not only in terms of what they're going to do with basketball. Any thoughts in terms of what Langston is getting done on that side?
They continue to just play solid basketball, like you said, winning basketball. That's huge with regards to Langston.
Yeah, I'm fascinated in terms of what that looks like when you talk about those teams getting a lot of wins going on there. While we're doing that, as things get to start up, give us an update in terms of what's going on the court there.
Yeah, Texas Southern on top of Jackson State 43-26 as we're just getting started with the second half.
Give us some other scores in terms of what's going around the conference for the women's showcase on Thursday. As now folks are getting used to this and getting into this. Is our second week in a row where the women kick off things, I should say third week in a row as women get things started. You've had one set of teams play at home, another set play on road, so you're starting to rotate it. So certainly people are getting interested. What are some updates do you have across the SWAC for Thursday game?
Yeah, UAPB on top of Bethune-Cookman. They're just getting underway here in the third quarter, 39-32. FAMU, that game is in the fourth quarter now, all over Valley, 73-48. And you scored halftime. All corners got back into this game. 27-27 is the score from Prairie.
Good stuff there. Florida Memorial. On the men's side, they sit at 12-4, 5-2 in the conference race. Solid, but they got to find a way to get some wins if they want to stretch these things out in terms of what that looks like. Always fascinating from that perspective when you talk about those teams like Florida Memorial that are trying to set themselves up for late season championship that puts them in place for automatic bid to the NCAA tournament or tournament championship, or can they have a good enough overall record to get an at-large bid? So I'm fascinated what that looks like. I didn't say I want to do this. I want to give a shout out to Xavier women out of the Red River Athletic Conference. They're 17-0.
Oh wow!
How do you forget that?
Yeah.
They haven't lost a game, and they're playing obviously some tremendous basketball. But getting back to the HBCU AC in terms of the teams over there getting it done, you have teams such as Stillman, overall 10-7, 8-2 in the conference record as they're in the East. In the West, something about Tougaloo. Tougaloo just has decided that they're in the basketball.
Yeah.
14-4. Yeah, 14-4 overall, 8-1. They're in the West Division, but right behind them is 11-5, 7-2 is Dillon, playing some pretty good basketball. So should be interesting going down the stretch of what that looks like in some of those key matchups as we get anything about the HBCU AC, Tougaloo, as you talk about what they're getting done, particularly. You think they can continue to play some good basketball and win?
Absolutely. Jerry Struthers is going to make them play defense, and they get some time shooting. They could be a difficult team to do.
With that being said, a little bit of things going on for us. Any closing comments that you kind of think about as we bring it to a close?
Yeah, Texas Southern on top, 45-26, up 19 on top of Jackson State. That's huge statement. I think, if things hold,
getting a win, it just matter if things
hold court here, that's going to turn heads around the spot.
Yeah, I got to ask you, you can't just kind of slide out on that. Yeah, what does that mean if Tigers are able to hold on, not just for the win, but in some fashion winning at this?
It means Texas Southern's women's basketball is back in the basketball business.
Yeah, simple way to put it. I like that. Let me give you a couple of scores on the way out of this in terms of those Thursday games, if you would. Let's go on the women's side for those other Thursday matchups going on. Let's go to the OVC. Tennessee State may be looking to see if they can get their first win. Might have to take it to overtime. It's a 66. Knotted up with 4 seconds left.
Oh, wow.
Tennessee State find a way to get the win. Obviously, their men play later, so we'll give you some updates on what that looks like. Talking about on the men's side, let's look at the Coastal and see what's going on over there as A&T is losing at halftime, 45-36 to Monmouth. Tough one there. Hampton is down early to William and Mary, 27-22 at halftime, to give you those updates. So that's your HBCU basketball updates as we concentrated on the Division II and NIA. We'll see what goes around the SWAC as you get your doubleheaders on Saturday, your MEAC matchup, as they kind of taking the week off for a holiday weekend, but you do have that big matchup. Morehouse at the Division II level at the SIAC, Howard out of MEAC. Howard just lost to Bowie State out of the CIAA, so it'll be interesting to see if that happens. Obviously, talk about Morehouse expansion. I've always said that you should go after Bowie State, so I said at the end of the game that the coach or the conference commissioner, ADs out there should have had their invitation ready to go before they left the building, if not in the handshake line. Won't you come? As Joshua Sims said. Won't you come? With that being said, let's get out of here. Thank you for listening to Dr. Bill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Bill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 o'clock. Look forward next week in the lab, discuss the latest of the lab, news out there across the HBCU sporting scene. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta, DrKenyattacavil. That's Facebook and Instagram, Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, on YouTube and Facebook. Dream big, move forward. We will talk with you soon. Charles?
Of course.
Roy?
Lecture.
Dismiss.